The NBA playoffs are just about to start. As of this recording, it is April 10th, so a day before any of the playing games actually start. So there are still a lot of the series that I don't know the matchups between, like the 1-8 and 2-7 matchups. But yeah, I'm just gonna get right into my predictions now. So in the Western Conference play-in tournament for the 7th seed, we have the Los Angeles Lakers. 8th seed, we have the Minnesota Timberwolves. 9th seed, we have the New Orleans Pelicans. And 10th seed, we have the Oklahoma City Thunder. So the first matchup will be between the Lakers and the Timberwolves for the 7th seed against the number 2 Memphis Grizzlies. And considering what has happened recently with the Minnesota Timberwolves, with the Rudy Gobert punch and Jalen or Jaden McDaniels, I can't remember which one it is, breaking his hand, two of their top defenders, and Gobert and McDaniels. So I don't think they'll be able to pull it out against the Los Angeles Lakers, who have been especially hot recently. So yeah, I think the Lakers will take the 7th seed. Then for the 9th seed Pelicans against the 10th seed Oklahoma City Thunder, I think the New Orleans Pelicans will be able to advance in the play-in tournament against the much younger, inexperienced Thunder. I think they are a bit too young to pull off an upset on a bit more experienced Pelicans, especially with CJ McCollum and Brandon Ingram in their lineup. So then we will have the New Orleans Pelicans against the Minnesota Timberwolves for the final 8th spot in the West. And like I explained before, I think the Timberwolves will be very shaken after the events that have recently taken place in their organization. So I think the Pelicans will be able to swipe the 8th seed from them, and they will be matching up against the number 1 Denver Nuggets. Now for the rest of the Western Conference playoffs, I'm going to be using that NBA Pick'em Playoff Bracket Challenge. First matchup is the number 1 Denver Nuggets against the presumed to be number 8 seed New Orleans Pelicans. I think the Denver Nuggets will win in 6 games, although I think the Pelicans will be able to take 2 games from the Nuggets just because of how shaky the Nuggets have been recently, as they have been 1-3 in their last 4, and the Pelicans have hit a hot streak recently. I think they ended the season 8-2 or at least 7-3 in their last 10. So I think the Pelicans will be able to take it to 6 games, but the Nuggets will ultimately advance. Then the next matchup we have is the number 4 Phoenix Suns against the number 5 LA Clippers. The Clippers obviously don't know what Paul George's status will be for this series yet. He has no timetable for his return, and he's just barely getting back to on-court exercises. So I definitely think Paul George will miss at least like the first couple of games in the series, if not more. So that definitely puts the Clippers at a disadvantage. But they also do have Kawhi, who definitely turns into a different player in the playoffs and just goes absolutely berserk. But I think the Phoenix Suns will still advance in 6. Then we have the number 3 Sacramento Kings against the number 6 Golden State Warriors. The Golden State Warriors, obviously the defending champs, and they have much more playoff experience than the Sacramento Kings, whose number 1 option in the clutch, De'Aaron Fox, has literally 0 playoff games. So that isn't very comforting for the Sacramento Kings fans. Obviously, the Kings have still had a great season and the best offense in the league. So I think they'll still be able to take 2 games from the defending champs, but I think experience will be the greatest factor in this series, and the return of Andrew Wiggins. I think the Golden State Warriors will be able to advance to the conference semifinals in 6 games. Then for the number 2 Memphis Grizzlies against the number 7 LA Lakers, I think the Lakers have a pretty hard matchup against the Grizzlies. I think they would have been much better fitted for the Denver Nuggets than the Memphis Grizzlies, or basically any other team in the Western Conference, as the Memphis Grizzlies have one of the best rim protectors in the league, that being Jaren Jackson Jr., who is most likely the Defensive Player of the Year. So I think they'll be able to lock down Anthony Davis. I do think the LA Lakers definitely are high-tier contenders, but I think this first-round matchup is very unfortunate for them, and I think they'll be out in 6 games. Now for the Western Conference semifinals, we have number 1 Denver Nuggets against the number 4 Phoenix Suns, the number 6 Warriors against number 2 Memphis. So for Nuggets for Suns, I think the Suns will take the series in 6 games. KD and the Suns have looked unstoppable. I don't think that it helps that Jokic isn't really the best in the playoffs, although they do have Jamal Murray, who, as previously mentioned, is a beast in the playoffs. And I think the Suns will be able to take the series in 6 games just due to their firepower from Kevin Durant and Devin Booker and Chris Paul. Then for the number 6 Warriors against the number 2 Grizzlies, this will be a very fun matchup, as we got to see this in last year's Western Conference semifinals. And I think the Warriors will overtake the Grizzlies, except for this time in 7 games. If it does go to 7 games, the Warriors will obviously have to win on the road against the Grizzlies, which I think is something that the playoff version of the Warriors will be able to do, as we've seen time after time. The Warriors just flip the switch in the playoffs, and I think they'll still be able to do that with Andrew Wiggins and Gary Payton joining the squad recently. In the Western Conference Finals, the number 4 Phoenix Suns will win the number 6 Golden State Warriors in 6 games. I think this will be because, although I made the case that the Golden State Warriors are a different team in the playoffs, I think the Phoenix Suns have just been way more reliable overall this season, especially with the addition of KD to the lineup, and Devin Booker is still very good in the playoffs, and I think Chris Paul will be able to play his part and help the Suns advance to the NBA Finals. Now for the Eastern Conference, we'll first do their play-in tournament. So we have the Miami Heat against the Atlanta Hawks for the 7th seed. In the first matchup, I think the Miami Heat, specifically Jimmy Butler, will be able to take this game, and so they will be taking the 7th seed against the Boston Celtics. And then for the Toronto Raptors against the Chicago Bulls, I think that the Chicago Bulls will be able to win, especially since they've been very good recently. Then we have the Chicago Bulls against the Atlanta Hawks for the 8th seed, and I think that the Chicago Bulls will be able to win again just based off of how they've been playing recently. And so they will be playing against the Milwaukee Bucks for the 2nd consecutive year in the playoffs. Now for the rest of the Eastern Conference playoffs, we have the number 1 Milwaukee Bucks against the number 8 Chicago Bulls, and I think the Milwaukee Bucks will sweep the Bulls. Although the Bulls have been hot, I don't think they're hot enough for Giannis and Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton, Brook Lopez, and the whole Bucks gang, who are very deep. Next up, we have the Cleveland Cavaliers against the New York Knicks. Basically just Donovan Mitchell against the team that could have had him but didn't. And I think this will be a super exciting series. I think Donovan will have at least one 50-point game, and I think this series will go to 7 games. I would have had this series going to just 5 or 6 games for the Cavs if I hadn't just seen Jalen Brunson drop, I think, his career high against the Cavs just a couple games ago, which isn't very comforting for Cavs fans, but I still think the Cavs have good enough defense and playmakers like Garland and Mitchell to stay in this series and ultimately come out on top. Then we have the number 3 Philadelphia 76ers against the Brooklyn Nets. I think the Sixers will sweep the Nets, although the Nets have looked pretty interesting, especially Mikal Bridges. I think that just the experience and motivation for Joel Embiid to perform well in the playoffs will help them come out on top. And then we have the number 2 Boston Celtics against the Miami Heat. I think this will just go to 5 games. Although last year when these two teams met, it did go to 7 games in the conference finals. Obviously the Heat aren't the same team that they were last year, or at least aren't playing as good as they were last year. In the second round in the Eastern Conference, we have the Milwaukee Bucks against the Cleveland Cavaliers. I think the Bucks will win it 6 games. The Cavs definitely have a good defense with Jared Allen and Evan Mobley to somewhat contain Giannis, but Giannis is Giannis, so I think he'll be able to get through the Cavs, especially if Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton step up in this series. Then I have the number 3 Philadelphia 76ers winning the Boston Celtics in 6 games. The Sixers did just have a crucial win against the Celtics about a week ago. The Celtics obviously didn't have Jaylen Brown in that matchup, but I still think the Sixers, with the motivation for Joel Embiid and James Harden and Doc Rivers to perform better in the playoffs, I think that will help them get through the Celtics. Yeah, and then we'll have the Milwaukee Bucks against the Sixers in the conference finals, and I think that Brook Lopez and Giannis will be able to somewhat lock down Joel Embiid, and Drew Holiday will be a good matchup against James Harden. I think the Milwaukee Bucks will advance to the second finals in 3 years. So now in the NBA Finals, we have the Phoenix Suns against the Milwaukee Bucks, which is a rematch of the 2021 NBA Finals. This will definitely be a fun series. I think it will go to 7 games, but in favor of the Bucks. I think the Bucks' defense and depth will definitely win them this series. Although the Suns do have a lot of firepower, I think the Milwaukee Bucks will be the 2023 NBA champions. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed my playoff predictions video. If you did, please consider liking and subscribing and maybe sharing it with a friend. Yeah, I'll hopefully make another video somewhat soon, and see you all later.